for serum, and they took my name, and a week later a German assessment came into the hospital and asked for my name, and I got very frightened. I said, German officer asked specially for my name, and he got for me a wurst, a length of wurst, because you gave the blood, you gave. I mean, I didn't give them, they took it from me, but nevertheless it came handy to me. So this kind of incident, sometimes you see from the Germans, such a contrast. And one day they heartlessly, without emotion, they are killing hundreds of thousands of people, and then they make exceptions, make something like that. I really don't know. Anyway, I didn't philosophize a lot into it. I just ate it and finished it.
So because the hospital was not full at that time, you were able to leave it?
Yeah.
You didn't, you said that others got taken to
yeah, I recovered there, and I stayed in the hospital, and it was a very good... I was hoping that I'm going to pull through the whole winter in the hospital, because it was more pleasant than to go out to work in the cold. And by January, that's in January 1945, then we heard that the Russians are getting near, and Auschwitz will be evacuated very soon. They will take us somewhere further into Germany. And asked the hospital that I want to go. I don't want to stay in the hospital anymore, because I felt if this evacuation is going to come, maybe they don't bother with the people who are in the hospital, the patients. They will kill them on the spot, and only they will march those people who can ready to march. So I said I want to get out of the hospital, which he let me. He didn't mind. I could have stayed if I wanted, but I rather my own request. I asked for to be released from the hospital. So I went back.
You were there about 4 to 5 weeks?
I was there exactly, if you wish to know, from the 24th of November I went in, till the 16th of January. I was there in the hospital, which was, I really recovered. It was a good, better condition in the hospital than in the camp. So it was quite, comparatively, was good for me that I stayed there. And the 16th of January I went back to the camp. I hardly found my allocated barrack. 2 days later we were evacuated.
Before we talk about that evacuation and how that happened, I want to ask you a bit about whether you made relationships with people in the concentration camp in Auschwitz.
I had friends. Yes, I do, and I even know people whom I worked together with them, even up to that very day. For instance, I know brothers who, one of them was selected to the gas chambers, and he came back. He came back when the gassing was stopped, and both of them they live in London, and I know them.
And you provided sort of support for each other, presumably?
Yes, I mean that was a great thing that my older brother was with me, and that friend of mine who worked in the kitchen. But really, there was no such a thing as social life in the camp. Everybody was for himself, and you haven't seen many acts of kindness, or very occasionally you could see something. But generally speaking, I cannot speak much of spiritual life or social life into the camp. I mean, the Germans have succeeded to bring us down to the level of animals, and most of the people behaved like animals.
What did you see some behaviour amongst people that really quite shocked you in some ways?
No, it was not a question like that. It was not a question of helping others, or everybody wants to bother with himself. Everybody became very selfish. You had to be selfish to survive. I mean, I know, for instance, I was a bit more selfish than my brother. My brother, once I remember in the summer, a boy of my age was crying in the morning that he was stolen from him his bread. He hasn't ate up his bread portion. He put it away for the morning, and it was stolen from him during the night. So my brother gave him a piece of his own ration. I mean, this is something which I didn't understand why, but he's maybe at a higher spiritual level than I am. from his aunt, and he was so hungry, he was so thin because he was taller than me. He needed more food than I do, and nevertheless he really I'm looking up to him. That with the bread, and then when he for a bread from his rations put away a whole bread to buy a prayer book for a Shoah. It is something. He lives here in London. It's older than me.
And did you respect him for those things that he was doing?
I do, up to very day. Up to very day. He had more spiritual life in me than in me. It looked like I was more practical and more selfish. I remember I asked him, why you have to, so you don't say the whole prayers, you will say as much as you remember, but you give away a whole bread, it's overpaid.
How much older than you was he?
He was 2.5 years older than me.
And your sister was also somewhere in the camp,
Well,
but you
sister,
never saw her?
we didn't know anything about my sister because he did, at the day when we arrived at Auschwitz, he went in the women's camp, and that's the last we heard of him. I mean, what we first we knew about him after the war, when we found out that he's in Germany, and soon she will be back.
Before we move on to your evacuation, is there anything more about the Auschwitz experience that you feel you want to say?
There was a lot of little incidents which I don't remember clearly. No, I don't think it just comes to me anything. Actually, should have prepared myself better for the interview. Yeah.
So, what happened at when you were evacuated?
When we were evacuated, it was early morning. They said we are going to be evacuated. We had to stand up. Everybody had to stand up in rows of 5, and just you see that the beginning of the volume is already out of the gates of the camp, and we're just following it. It was quite in a rush somehow, and we just walked, kept on walking, accompanied by Wehrmacht soldiers. Possibly they couldn't spare their cess by then, and we walked for almost 24 hours, and it was very hard for me because I just came out from the hospital. Beside, even if I would have been in my normal strength, but being in hospital, then you had no chance of walking or exercise, and your body gets a bit flabby. And after the night's walking, I just couldn't walk any further. Then they said, since people started struggling behind, and then they said, people who cannot walk any further should step out of the line, should stand aside. And then I realized that this is the end now. This is the end. This coming days, but I couldn't walk any further. My body has really given up. I just haven't had the energy. My feet were swollen. I've discarded the blanket that they were giving us in the beginning of the march. I just walked as a robot, but I found myself that I cannot walk any longer. So I stepped aside, and I was prepared for the worst. That I realized that they are not going to live here. But fortunately, this is not what happened. We were taken into another camp.
I am Sharon Tyler, and I am interviewing Erno Abelesz, and this is tape 4. Tell me about the evacuation. Continue that.
Well, as I was saying, that the next morning when they said the people who can't walk any further should step aside, I was among them. And they directed us. There was not a great many people who stand aside because the majority, they just kept on walking. And I remember even the looks, they looked at us with a pitying glances that these are the people who are going to get shot. But don't know why they let us they took us into another camp. And
it was just there, was it? Just nearby where
nearby another camp. Nearby was another camp, and they took us in. And as I was walking towards the camp, I just couldn't walk any further. And there was a German Wehrmacht who was accompanying us, and he kept on pushing me. He says, "Look, you haven't got far to go." So he encouraged me to just move. He kept on pushing me. He pushed me, so I ran forwards a few meters, and then I stopped again. He kept on pushing me until I got into the camp. When I got to the camp to the exhaustion, I lay myself at the first bunk bed, and I fall asleep. I fall to a deep sleep. And I had a bread with me when I fallen asleep, and I remember the next morning I put it under my head, and then when I woke up I was looking for the bread. It was not there, and it upset me. But we were not there in that camp too long. Within a few days they evacuated that camp, and I just had something, a feeling, because I saw it, that the Germans are so nervous, running around in the camp. They said, everybody has to go out, we are taking, and people said, oh, we cannot walk, you can shoot us here, we cannot walk. I said, no, you don't have to walk, we are going to take you by train, but everybody has to be out. And I had an inspiration. I went to hide into under a bunk bed. It was a very low bunk bed, you could hardly, I could manage to get in underneath. And I heard a German coming in and says, anybody here? And I didn't make any sign, but there was somebody there, and he said, I cannot walk. He says, you cannot walk, and he wanted to shoot him. And then he jumped up and he ran out of the barracks to join the rest. And all I can tell you, the next day, or was it the same day, I think this happened in the morning, in the evenings, we had some strange-looking people coming into the camp, covered in white because it was middle of the winter, and they asked for food in a strange language. It was Russians, Russian soldiers.
Did you recognize it as Russian?
I didn't recognize them, but they were just, people said that there are Russians in the camp, the Russians are here, the Russians are in the camp. People started, we are now free, we are liberated. And the Russians, we were surprised to see them, and they were surprised to see us. What are we? We are Germans or what? All what they wanted, they were hungry because they were just the soldiers who were on the forefront. And after a few days, they set up a kitchen there, the Russians, not especially for the camp because not many people there, but also we were free to roam around from the camps. We left the camp and we went to wherever you can get food, begging from the peasants and villagers. All I can say, especially myself and another boy of my age, there was two grown-up people who were adopted us for selfish reasons, because they like that. If with two children and two adults, you could get more. When it comes to begging, it's easier. And we've done it for a few days, and this is not to go around begging. And then we found that there is in Sosnovitz, there is a Red Cross who is going to deal with survivors. And we went to Sosnovitz, it was a few kilometers from there, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. I remember we had some bread, and all the time we had cooked dried peas, nothing else, just peas. And I think I had enough by then from the peas, and I thought I will go further. And then I went to Krakow.
When you were in the camp, what happened to your brother at this point?
Oh, my brother stayed in the hospital camp in Auschwitz.
Right, so he didn't come on the same...
He didn't come on the same march. He did not come.
Right.
He was liberated there and then.
Right.
Because, contrary to expectations, they didn't manage to evacuate the hospital camp, and the hospital camp were liberated intact, except those who died in the hospital camp for natural reasons.
And do you know what happened to those people who did leave the second camp? Was it Althammer? Was that the name of the camp?
Althammer.
Do you know what happened to those who did leave there?
No,
Who were going
I
on
don't
the
know
train?
anybody. See, I don't know anybody from that camp. So I didn't know what happened to them. Possibly historians may know, but I don't know what happened to them. But I know the main march what left Auschwitz had very few has arrived in Germany. There was killings on the way and starvation, and it was not good.
So the people who did remain in Althammer were people like you who hid, basically?
Yeah. Yes, people who hid somewhere, or maybe some people were in the kitchen, or some were hiding in different places. You see, at that time you don't look what's going on with other people. You become very selfish. So things. If I would have known now that how important it is to know exactly what happened, I would have written down in a diary and have to take a note what happens to other people. But at that time, besides that, I was very young, and I had this survival instinct, and I was not really cared about what happened to others. I was really looking after myself.
What kind of reaction did you, when you went to Sosnovitz, and you were sort of mixing amongst people, trying to get food and things, what kind of reactions did you get from people around you? Do you remember?
Well, I was treated very well. I must say the Polish peasants, they just had pity on me, and I could have carried on to living among them. They could have fed me.
And they knew that you were Jewish?
Of course they knew that I'm Jewish, yes, possibly. A kind of atonement, what they did to the Jews, the Poles, or whatever, I don't know. All I know, they never closed the doors in front of us. Always gave whatever. And some of them look they haven't had much food. They're miserable.
Do you remember what you felt around this time, having been liberated by
Well,
Russians?
I felt it's something great things. I'm a survivor of my, possibly the sole survivor for the family, and it's a great change where you know that you are going to live, but what the future is going to bring, which way to go, what to go, which country to go to, and how to establish your life again. I mean, I knew by that time that I have no parents, and I didn't know whether there will be any other survivors from my close family. I just felt lost. I didn't know what's going to happen, and for the timing I was just really, my main point is just to eat well, whatever food I can get hold of it, and very quickly physically I recovered. Very quickly. I was not. I was good. I was in a good physical condition. I stayed in Krakow for quite a while, waiting for my brother, because I knew that he was liberated, but he somehow never followed me. Never arrived, and I came to. And I didn't know what happened to him, so I thought, there's not much point for me to stay in Poland. I'm going to go back. If there's any survivors of my family, I'm going back to Hungary, to Kapovar, where I come from. And at the second transport from Krakow, I went from Krakow to Romania and Hungary with a train. I joined it, and
When was this?
Oh, that was already end of April. End of April. I remember. Still, I saw in the Polish newspaper that President Roosevelt has died. That was the beginning of April, I believe. Also, I looked. Even at that time, I was getting back my interest in newspapers, but unfortunately, I couldn't speak any Polish. I just looked at the names of the towns, and what do I find? Kapovar. It says Czerwone Army, because I always picked up words. The Red Army. That was the headline. The Red Army is on the borders of Austria, and he said Kapovar, Kőszeg has been taken by the Red Army. So I said that was a sign. It's time to go back to Hungary.
So you got on the.
I got on the train. I arrived. It didn't go to Budapest straight because it went further to Romania. So I got off at the Hungarian border, and I had to take another train to another village, because it was no proper train connection at that time. I had to do it bits by bits. There was no directly you can travel from there to Budapest. First I went to one town, and then I reported to the Jewish organizations were active already, who were looking after deportees. And in fact, I arrived. I don't forget. I did know that it was Saturday. Saturday morning, I arrived from the train, and as I'm walking in with my rucksack I managed to organize in Krakow, I'm walking in the street of Miskolc, and I saw a group of Hasidim coming towards me, coming from the shul. And this was a revelation. That's the first time when I saw that things like maybe there are some people like me. And they invited me for a Shabbos meal. I said, where? I said, I just came back from Auschwitz. Says, yeah, where you come from? Where are you from? Kapovar. He says, you're Jewish? I said, sure I'm Jewish. Sure I'm Jewish. I said, not a year